When Claire discovers a handwritten letter tucked inside her husband's rarely used briefcase, she expects nothing more than an old work document or a forgotten note. Instead, the words written in unfamiliar handwriting unravel 16 years of marriage, revealing a double life so meticulously constructed that it forces her to question every moment, every promise, every truth she thought she knew about the man sleeping beside her. The briefcase smelled of old leather and rain. Claire Mitchell knelt on the closet floor of her bedroom, surrounded by boxes she'd been meaning to organize for months, her hands dusty from moving storage containers that hadn't been touched in years. The late afternoon sun cut through the Venetian blinds in horizontal stripes, painting the hardwood floor in bars of golden shadow. She hadn't planned to go through David's things. That wasn't the kind of wife she was. She trusted him. After 16 years of marriage, trust was the foundation everything else was built on. But the closet needed cleaning, and David was away on another business trip, his third this month, and the briefcase had been shoved so far back behind winter coats that she'd almost missed it entirely. It was beautiful, actually. Rich brown leather, well made, the kind of thing that aged gracefully instead of falling apart. She didn't recognize it. David used a modern laptop bag these days, black nylon with too many pockets, practical and forgettable. This briefcase looked like something from another era, something a different version of her husband might have carried. Claire ran her fingers over the brass latches. They were tarnished slightly, but still functional. She pressed them both simultaneously, and they opened with a soft click that seemed too loud in the quiet house. The hinges creaked as she lifted the lid. Inside, the briefcase was mostly empty. A few old pens, a small notepad with nothing written in it, a receipt from a restaurant she didn't recognize, dated 3 years ago, faded almost to illegibility. The kind of forgotten debris that accumulates in bags we stop using but can't quite throw away. But there was something else. Tucked into the interior pocket, pressed flat against the lining, was an envelope. It was cream-colored, good quality paper, the kind you bought for special occasions. No address on the front, just a name written in elegant cursive, David. Claire's heart began to beat faster without her quite understanding why. It was just an envelope, just a letter, probably something work-related, probably nothing at all, but her hands were shaking slightly as she pulled it free. The envelope wasn't sealed. The flap was tucked in loosely, as if someone had opened it many times, read the contents, then carefully put it away again. Claire hesitated. She could hear her own breath in the silence of the house, could hear the refrigerator humming downstairs, could hear the neighbor's dog barking 2 houses over. She should put it back, should respect David's privacy, should trust the man she'd been married to for 16 years, the father of her 2 children, the person who knew her better than anyone else in the world. But she didn't put it back. She pulled out the letter instead. It was written on matching cream-colored stationery, the handwriting flowing and feminine. Beautiful handwriting, the kind that looked effortless but actually took practice. Claire's own handwriting was hurried and practical, all sharp angles and abbreviated words. This was different. This was someone who took time. The letter began without preamble. My dearest David. Those 3 words changed everything. Not dear David like a colleague or acquaintance might write. My dearest David. Possessive. Intimate. The way a lover would start a letter. The way Claire herself might have written to him back in the early days when they still wrote each other notes and left them in surprising places. Claire's throat tightened. She told herself it could be innocent. An old girlfriend from before they met. A distant relative with old-fashioned manners. There were 1,000 explanations that didn't involve betrayal. But she knew. Somewhere deep in her gut, in that place where truth lives before logic can dress it up or deny it, she knew this letter was going to destroy her life. She kept reading anyway. I know we agreed not to write things down. I know it's dangerous. But some things can't be said over rushed phone calls or stolen weekends. Some things need to be written so you can hold them, so you can see the words and know they're real. Stolen weekends. Claire's hands clenched the paper so hard it crinkled. David's business trips, the conferences and client meetings and training sessions that seemed to multiply over the years. He traveled for work. He always had. It was part of his job as a regional sales manager. She'd never questioned it. Why would she? He always came home, always called every night, always brought her small gifts from wherever he'd been, a coffee mug from Seattle, a snow globe from Denver, a set of coasters from Nashville, evidence of his travels. Proof he was where he said he was, or proof that he was very, very good at lying. The girls ask about you constantly, the letter continued. Lily wants to know when you're coming home. She made you a drawing at school, a picture of our family, all four of us holding hands. She used every color in the crayon box. I have it on the refrigerator, but I know I'll have to take it down before anyone else sees it, before anyone asks questions I can't answer. The girls, all four of us. The words seemed to pulse on the page, growing larger with each heartbeat. Claire read the paragraph again, then again, trying to make the words mean something different, trying to rearrange them into a sentence that didn't confirm what her racing heart already knew. David had other children, daughters, Lily and at least one other, girls who drew pictures of him, who asked when he was coming home, who thought of him as their father, because he was their father. Claire pressed her hand against her chest. She couldn't breathe properly. The air in the closet felt thick, insufficient. Her vision narrowed at the edges, darkness creeping in. She recognized the feeling, a panic attack starting to build. She'd had them before, years ago, before she met David, before she felt safe. She forced herself to breathe slowly, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Count to 4. Again, again. The darkness receded slightly, enough to keep reading. Enough to see exactly how deep this betrayal went. Emma's getting so big. She's walking everywhere now, into everything. She has your eyes, you know, that same deep brown that looks almost black in certain light. Sometimes I catch her staring at me with those eyes, and it's like looking at you, like you're here even when you're not. Emma, a baby, young enough to just be learning to walk, which meant Claire's mind did the math automatically, couldn't help itself, which meant David had been with this woman recently, within the past year or two, while he was married to Claire, while he was living in this house, while he was sleeping in their bed, while he was lying to her face every single day. Claire sat back on her heels, the letter trembling in her hands. The closet suddenly felt impossibly small, the air pressing against her from all sides. She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to tear the letter into 1,000 pieces and pretend she'd never found it, but she kept reading instead. Because once you've seen the crack in the foundation, you can't unsee it. Once you know the truth is waiting, you have to chase it all the way down, no matter how much it hurts. I know this is hard for you. I know living 2 lives takes a toll. I see it in your face sometimes, when you think I'm not looking. The exhaustion, the guilt. But I need you to know I don't regret any of it. Not the girls, not us, not even the secrecy, as much as I hate it. Because the alternative is losing you. And I can't bear that. The girls can't bear that. Living 2 lives. The phrase made it sound like something noble, like a superhero juggling responsibilities. But there was nothing noble about what David had done. He'd built an entire second family while Claire raised their own children. Ryan, who was 14 now, and Sophie, who was 11. He'd been a father to other girls while missing soccer games and parent-teacher conferences and ordinary Tuesday evenings at home because he was traveling for work. How many lies? Claire tried to count them and couldn't. 16 years of marriage, thousands of days, tens of thousands of moments, every I love you and I'll be home soon, and just another business trip had been tainted by this other life, this other family, this other wife. Because that's what the letter was saying, wasn't it? Even if the writer hadn't used that word yet. All 4 of us, our family, the girls. This wasn't just an affair. This was a second marriage. A parallel existence that had been running alongside Claire's real life like a shadow she'd been too blind to see. I wish things were different, the letter continued. I wish we could be open about what we have. I wish the girls could call you Daddy in public, instead of having to save it for behind closed doors. I wish I could introduce you to my family, show you off, let the world know that you're mine. But we both knew the situation when this started. You were already married, already had kids. You told me from the beginning that you couldn't leave them, that you loved them too much to destroy their lives. And I accepted that because I loved you more than I loved the idea of a conventional relationship, because something was better than nothing, because I'd rather share you than lose you completely. Claire's stomach twisted. The woman, whoever she was, had known about Claire and the kids from the start, had chosen this anyway, had agreed to be the secret, the hidden family, the one who got the stolen weekends and late-night phone calls instead of the everyday mundane reality of marriage. Except it hadn't stayed that way, had it? At some point this woman had stopped being content with scraps. She'd had children with David. She'd built a life with him. She'd become, in every way that mattered, a wife. Which made Claire what exactly? The first wife? The legitimate one? Or just the one who didn't know she was being replaced? "Sometimes I imagine what would happen if she found out about us," the letter said, and Claire's breath caught. There she was. She, the other woman. The obstacle. The person standing in the way of this secret family's happiness. Would she leave you? Would she fight for you? Would she understand somehow that love isn't finite? That you loving me doesn't mean you love her less? No, Claire whispered to the empty closet. No, she would not understand that. Because love might not be finite, but trust was. And once broken, it didn't grow back. It couldn't be taped together or wished into wholeness. It was just gone, leaving nothing but the sharp edges of what used to be. But I can't think about that too much, the letter continued. Can't let myself imagine the confrontation, the explosion, the aftermath, because if I do, I'll go crazy with the waiting, with the fear that any day could be the day it all comes crashing down. So instead I focus on what we have, on these moments. On the girl's laughter and your smile, and the way you hold me like I'm the only woman in the world even though I know I'm not. The letter was signed simply, "Forever yours, Catherine." Catherine. Now the other woman had a name. Catherine with the beautiful handwriting, and the 2 daughters, and the willingness to share a man who belonged to someone else first. Catherine who wrote letters that should never have been written, confessions that should have stayed locked in her heart. But she'd written it anyway, and David had kept it, hidden it in an old briefcase he thought no one would ever look through, preserved it like evidence, like a pressed flower from a relationship too precious to let fade completely. Claire carefully folded the letter and slid it back into the envelope. Her hands were steadier now. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something colder, something harder, a clarity that cut through the confusion like a blade. She looked at the envelope again, studying it more carefully this time. There was no postmark, no stamp, which meant Catherine hadn't mailed it. She'd given it to David in person, during one of those stolen weekends, one of those business trips that took him away from his real family so he could play house with his secret one. Claire stood up slowly, her knees protesting after kneeling for so long. She carried the briefcase out of the closet and set it on the bed she shared with David, the bed where they'd conceived Ryan and Sophie, the bed where they'd had countless conversations about their future, their dreams, their plans for growing old together. All of it lies, or not lies exactly, half-truths, incomplete pictures, stories with entire chapters missing. She looked at the bedside table on David's side, at the lamp with the crooked shade he'd been meaning to fix for months, at the stack of books he was slowly making his way through, thrillers mostly, stories about men with secrets and women who discovered them. The irony wasn't lost on her. At the framed photo of their family from last Christmas, all 4 of them in matching red sweaters that Sophie had insisted on, Ryan looking vaguely embarrassed, but smiling anyway, David with his arm around Claire, pulling her close, both of them looking at the camera like they had everything they needed. What a beautiful lie that photo told. Claire picked it up and studied David's face, really studied it, looking for signs she'd missed. Was there guilt in his eyes? Exhaustion from maintaining 2 families? Any hint at all that the man in this photo was not who he claimed to be? She couldn't see it. He looked happy, content, exactly like a man who loved his family and had nothing to hide. He was good at this. That's what she was realizing. David was exceptionally good at lying, at compartmentalizing, at being 2 different people in 2 different lives without letting them bleed into each other. How long had he been practicing? Had he always been this way, even before they met? Or had he learned it over time, refined it, perfected it until the deception became second nature? Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw David's name on the screen. A text message. Flight delayed. Won't be home until late. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you. 2 words he'd probably texted to Catherine too. Maybe even today. Maybe he sent the same message to both of them, like he was reading from a script, hitting his marks, making sure both wives felt sufficiently loved and reassured. She stared at the message for a long moment. Then, instead of responding with her usual, "Love you too, drive safe," she typed something different. "We need to talk when you get home. It's important." She watched the 3 dots appear, showing he was typing. Then disappear, then appear again. Finally his response came through, Everything okay? You're scaring me. Good, Claire thought. You should be scared. But she didn't type that. Instead, she wrote, "Just come home. We'll talk then." Another long pause. Then, "Okay, I'll be there as soon as I can." Claire set the phone down and looked around the bedroom. This room that had felt like a sanctuary now felt like a crime scene. How many nights had David lain beside her, pretending to sleep, his mind actually hundreds of miles away with Catherine and Lily and Emma? How many times had he made love to Claire while thinking of someone else? How many times had he whispered, "I love you," while holding back the bigger truth? She needed to know more. The letter had given her names, confirmed the existence of the other family, but it hadn't given her the full picture. She needed details, evidence, proof that would hold up not just in her own mind but in a courtroom, because she was already thinking ahead, already planning, already moving from shock to strategy. If this story has touched you so far, please leave your like, share in the comments if you've ever faced betrayal or know someone who has, and send this to someone who needs to know they're not alone. Truth always finds a way to the surface, no matter how deep it's buried. Claire spent the next 3 hours searching. Not frantically, she'd moved past panic into something colder, more methodical. She went through David's dresser drawers carefully, making sure to leave everything exactly as she'd found it. Checked the pockets of coats and jackets hanging in the closet. Looked through the shoe boxes stacked on the top shelf. She found small things, receipts from restaurants in cities David had claimed to visit for work, a ticket stub from a children's movie she'd never heard him mention, a grocery store loyalty card for a chain that didn't exist in their state, puzzle pieces that hadn't meant anything in isolation, but now fit together into a devastating picture. In a box labeled "Old Work Files" in the back of his office closet, she found more. Bank statements for an account she didn't know existed. Not massive amounts, David was too smart for that, but regular withdrawals. 500 here, 800 there. Enough to support a second household, without completely draining their joint accounts. How had she never noticed? Claire thought back over their finances. David handled most of the bills. She'd let him because he was good with numbers, organized, reliable. She'd trusted him, and he'd used that trust to hide an entire second life. There were documents, too. Photocopies of a birth certificate for Lily Marie Thompson, born 6 years ago. Another for Emma Grace Thompson, born 18 months ago. Father's name on both, David Mitchell. Mother's name, Catherine Ann Thompson. Thompson. So Catherine had kept her own last name, or maybe she'd never taken his because she couldn't, because David was already married to Claire, because their whole relationship existed in the shadows where legal marriage couldn't reach. Claire took photos of everything with her phone. Evidence. She was building a case even though she didn't know yet what she'd do with it. Confront David. File for divorce. Call Catherine. So many options, and all of them felt simultaneously necessary and impossible. She thought about Ryan and Sophie. They were at school right now, living their normal lives, completely unaware that their world was about to implode. Ryan had a soccer game tomorrow night. Sophie had been practicing a piano piece for weeks, excited to perform it at her recital next month. Normal kid things, normal family things. How was Claire supposed to tell them that their father had been lying to them their entire lives, that they had 2 half-sisters they'd never met, that everything they thought they knew about their family was based on deception? The house phone rang, startling her out of her thoughts. She looked at the caller ID, unknown number. Normally she'd let it go to voicemail, but something made her answer. "Hello?" Silence on the other end. Then, tentatively, a woman's voice. Is this Claire Mitchell?" Claire's heart stopped. She knew instantly who it was. "This is Catherine." A shaky breath. "Yes, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what to say." "Then why are you calling?" Claire's voice came out harder than she'd intended. She wasn't ready for this. Wasn't ready to hear the other woman's voice, to make her real in a way that names on birth certificates and letters in envelopes hadn't quite managed. "Because David told me about your text," Catherine said. "He's scared. He called me from the airport asking if I knew what was happening, if maybe you'd somehow found out. And I realized that if this is it, if this is the end, then I wanted to talk to you first, before everything explodes, before the lawyers and the anger and all of that. You want to talk?" Claire laughed, a harsh sound that didn't feel like it came from her body. "What exactly would you like to discuss? How you knowingly helped my husband commit bigamy? how you had children with a married man, how you destroyed my family. I know, Catherine said, and her voice broke. I know how it looks. I know what I am. But please, if you could just listen for a minute. No, Claire cut her off. No, I don't owe you anything. Not my time. Not my understanding. Nothing. You're right, Catherine said quietly. You don't owe me anything. But your children, Ryan and Sophie, they don't deserve to have their lives torn apart because of what the adults did. And my girls don't deserve to lose their father because I made terrible choices. So I'm asking, I'm begging you, before you make any decisions, can we just talk? Face to face. The audacity of it took Claire's breath away. This woman, this home wrecker, this interloper, wanted to meet, wanted to sit down and have a conversation like they were reasonable adults instead of two women whose lives had been destroyed by the same man's selfishness. Where? The word came out before Claire had consciously decided to say it. Catherine gave her an address, a coffee shop in the city about 45 minutes away. Neutral territory. 2 o'clock today. I can get my mother to watch the girls. Claire looked at the clock. It was 11:30 now. She had time. Fine. 2 o'clock. She hung up before Catherine could say anything else. Her hands were shaking again. What was she doing? Why had she agreed to this? She should be calling a lawyer, not meeting with her husband's mistress. No, his other wife. She should be protecting herself, not walking into what could easily be a trap. But she had to know, had to hear Catherine's side, had to understand how this had happened, how David had managed to fool everyone for so long. And maybe, somewhere deep down, she needed to see her rival in person, to put a face to the name, to understand what David had found in Catherine that he hadn't found in Claire. She went upstairs and changed clothes, trading her cleaning sweats for jeans and a sweater. She looked at herself in the mirror. At 43 she was still attractive, she thought, lines around her eyes from smiling and squinting in the sun. Grey threaded through her dark hair, which she'd been meaning to colour but never quite got around to. A few extra pounds from 2 pregnancies and 16 years of marriage, but nothing dramatic. Was Catherine younger, thinner, more beautiful? Did it matter? Claire grabbed her purse and keys. She left the briefcase on the bed where David would see it as soon as he walked into the room. Let him know she'd found it. Let him panic. Let him wonder exactly how much she knew and what she planned to do with that knowledge. She texted the school to let them know she'd be picking up Ryan and Sophie today instead of having them take the bus. She wasn't ready to tell them anything yet, but she wanted them close, wanted to see their faces and remember what was real, what was worth fighting for. The drive to the city passed in a blur. Claire's mind raced with scenarios, with questions, with anger that came in waves so strong she had to pull over twice to just breathe and collect herself. By the time she parked outside the coffee shop Catherine had named, she felt hollow, scoured out, empty of everything except a cold determination to get through this conversation without breaking down completely. The coffee shop was small and deliberately hipster, exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, the smell of espresso and baked goods. Claire spotted Catherine immediately, sitting at a table in the back corner. She was younger than Claire had imagined, maybe 35, with blonde hair pulled into a neat ponytail and a face that looked tired despite careful makeup. She was pretty, not devastatingly beautiful, not a woman who'd make heads turn on the street, just pretty in a girl-next-door kind of way. The kind of woman you'd see at the grocery store or the gym and never think twice about. This was her rival. This was the woman David had chosen to build a second life with. Catherine looked up and their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then Catherine stood up slowly, her hands gripping the edge of the table like she needed the support. "Thank you for coming," she said softly. Claire didn't respond. She just walked to the table and sat down across from Catherine, positioning herself so she could see the door. Escape route, just in case. "Talk," she said, and Catherine did. Catherine stared into her coffee cup, like the answers might be floating in the foam. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet Claire had to lean forward to hear her. "I met David 7 years ago, at a conference in Chicago. I was working for a marketing firm. He was there representing his company. We ended up at the same networking dinner, seated next to each other by chance. Or what I thought was chance. Later, I wondered if he'd arranged it somehow." Claire felt sick. 7 years. Not a brief affair, not a moment of weakness. 7 years of deliberate deception. He was charming, Catherine continued. Funny, attentive in a way I wasn't used to. I'd just gotten out of a bad relationship, and David seemed like everything my ex wasn't. Stable, mature, interested in what I had to say. She laughed bitterly. I was an idiot. When did he tell you about me? Claire asked. About his wife and kids. Not that night. Not the next morning either, when we... Catherine stopped, her cheeks flushing. He waited 3 months. 3 months of phone calls and texts and weekends together whenever he could get away. I thought I'd found the one. I was already imagining our future together. Then one night, he told me. Said he'd been meaning to tell me from the start, but didn't know how. Said he was in a loveless marriage, that he and his wife were only staying together for the kids, that he was planning to leave as soon as the timing was right. The oldest lie in the book, Claire said flatly. I know that now. Catherine's eyes filled with tears. But I was 30 years old and lonely, and I wanted so badly to believe him. So I did. I believed him when he said he loved me. I believed him when he said he just needed time to figure out how to leave without destroying his children. I believed every promise he made about our future together. And then you got pregnant. Catherine nodded. It wasn't planned. I was on birth control, but it failed. When I told David, I expected him to panic, to ask me to get an abortion, to finally show his true colors. But he didn't. He seemed almost happy. Said it was a sign. Said this was the push he needed to finally leave his marriage and start fresh with me. Claire's hands clenched into fists under the table. David had told her the same things once, 16 years ago when she'd gotten pregnant with Ryan. That it was a sign. That they were meant to be. That he couldn't wait to start their family. He was a parrot, a con artist, saying whatever words each woman needed to hear to keep them both trapped in his web. But he didn't leave, Catherine continued. Lily was born, and suddenly there were reasons why it wasn't the right time. His son was starting high school. His daughter was having trouble at school. His mother was sick. There was always something, always an excuse. And I was so tired, so overwhelmed with a new baby that I didn't push. I told myself I was being understanding, patient, mature. You were being used, Claire said. Yes, Catherine's voice broke. I was being used, but by the time I realized it, I was in too deep. I loved him. Lily loved him. He was there for us as much as he could be given the circumstances. He paid the bills. He came over when he could. He was a good father to Lily, even if he couldn't be there full time. And I convinced myself that something was better than nothing. Then you had another baby. Claire couldn't keep the accusation out of her voice. Catherine flinched. Emma was a mistake. A bigger mistake than Lily, because by then I knew what I was doing. I knew David wasn't going to leave you. I knew I was the secret family, the hidden one. But when I got pregnant again, I couldn't give her up. I couldn't have an abortion. So I had her, and I hate myself for it. I hate myself for bringing another child into this mess. The two women sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the coffee shop buzzed with normal life. People typing on laptops. Friends laughing over lattes, a young couple holding hands across a table, no one aware that in the back corner, 2 women were picking through the ruins of their lives. Why did you write that letter? Claire finally asked. The one I found. Why put it in writing? Catherine wiped her eyes. It was our anniversary, 6 years since we met. I was feeling sentimental and angry at the same time. Angry that we couldn't celebrate publicly. Angry that I couldn't post photos or change my relationship status or do any of the normal things couples do. So I wrote it all down, everything I was feeling, and I gave it to him the next time I saw him. Did he read it? In front of me, yes. Then he folded it up and put it away. Said it was too dangerous to keep, but too precious to destroy. I told him he was being stupid, that keeping written evidence of our relationship was asking for trouble. But he said... Catherine's voice caught. He said he needed something tangible to hold on to. Something that proved this was real, that I was real when he was living his other life. His other life. The one with Claire. The legitimate one. The one that got to exist in daylight instead of shadows. Do you love him? Claire asked suddenly. Really love him? Catherine looked startled by the question. I don't know anymore. I thought I did. But how can you really love someone who lies every single day? Someone who's never fully yours? I think maybe I just love the idea of him. The version he shows me. The fantasy. That's all any of us get, Claire said bitterly. The fantasy. The performance. The man he wants us to think he is. Catherine nodded slowly. When he called me today, panicking about your text, I realized something. He doesn't love either of us. Not really. He loves himself. He loves having two families, two women who adore him, two separate lives where he gets to be the hero. We're just props in his story. Interchangeable. The truth of it hit Claire like a fist to the chest. Catherine was right. This wasn't about love, it was about David's ego. His need to feel important, desired, essential to multiple people's happiness. He was addicted to being needed, to being the center of two different worlds. I have photos, Catherine said suddenly. She pulled out her phone and began scrolling through images. Of the girls. I thought you should see them. Claire didn't want to look. Didn't want to see the faces of the children David had with another woman. But Catherine turned the phone around, and Claire couldn't look away. Lily was 6, Catherine had said. She looked it. Gap-toothed smile. Wild, curly hair that was all David's genetics. Wearing a princess costume that was slightly too big. She was holding hands with a toddler. Emma. The baby with David's dark eyes and Catherine's delicate features. They were beautiful. Both of them. Happy and innocent and completely unaware that their entire existence was based on lies. They ask about him constantly, Catherine said softly. When's Daddy coming home? Why can't Daddy live with us? Why do we have to be quiet about Daddy when we're in public? I've been lying to them just like David's been lying to everyone, creating a false reality where their father is just working a lot instead of living with his real family. We're both real, Claire said sharply. That's the problem. You're right. Catherine put her phone away. You're the legal family, the legitimate one. I'm just the mistake he couldn't quite give up. Claire studied Catherine's face. She wanted to hate her, wanted to rage at her for knowingly destroying a marriage. But looking at her now, seeing the exhaustion and regret and self-loathing, Claire realized they weren't enemies. They were both victims of the same man's selfishness. What do you want from me? Claire asked. Why did you really ask me here? Catherine took a shaky breath. I want to tell you everything, every detail. Every time he was with me instead of you, every lie he told, every penny he spent on us. I want to give you all the ammunition you need to destroy him in court. And then I want you to do it. I want you to take him for everything he's worth because I can't be the one to do it. Claire stared at Catherine across the table, trying to process what she'd just heard. So you want me to destroy him? Why? Because I'm trapped, Catherine said, her voice rising slightly before she caught herself and lowered it again. Because I have 2 children who depend on the money he gives us. Because I quit my job when Emma was born, because daycare was too expensive, and David said he'd take care of us. Because I've been living in his shadow for 7 years, and I don't know how to get out without losing everything. She pulled out a tissue and dabbed at her eyes, careful not to smudge her mascara. But you have legal standing. You're the actual wife. You can divorce him and get half of everything. You can make sure he pays for what he's done. I can't do any of that. The most I can do is sue for child support, and even that would require admitting that I knowingly had children with a married man. I'd look like the villain. You're the victim. You have the power here. Claire leaned back in her chair. Catherine wasn't wrong. Legally, Claire held all the cards. She was the legitimate spouse, the one whose marriage license was filed with the state, the one who could take David to court and walk away with half their assets. The house, probably generous alimony given his infidelity. But was that what she wanted? Revenge? Punishment? Or did she want something else entirely? Tell me everything, Claire said. Start from the beginning. I want dates, places, details. If I'm going to do this, I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Catherine nodded and pulled out her phone again. I've been keeping records. Not because I thought I'd ever use them, but because I'm an organizer. I keep receipts and notes and calendars, old habits from my marketing days. She began to scroll through photos, showing Claire evidence of a parallel life that had existed alongside her own for 7 years. Receipts from hotels where David and Catherine had spent weekends together. Text messages where David told Catherine he loved her, while simultaneously texting Claire about being stuck in meetings. Calendar entries showing when he was supposed to be at conferences, but was actually at Lily's preschool graduation. He missed Ryan's 8th grade promotion, Claire said suddenly, remembering. He said he had an emergency client meeting in Portland. Couldn't get out of it. I was so angry. Ryan was devastated. Catherine's face crumpled. That was Lily's kindergarten graduation. I have photos. He's in every single one, front row, beaming like a proud father. The betrayal went deeper than Claire had imagined. It wasn't just that David had another family, it was that he'd chosen them. Over and over again he'd made the decision to be present for Catherine's children while missing important moments with his legitimate kids. Ryan and Sophie weren't his priority. They were his obligation, the family he was stuck with instead of the family he'd chosen. "Does he pay for everything?" Claire asked. "Your rent, groceries, clothes for the girls?" "Everything," Catherine confirmed. "I have a bank account he deposits money into every month, usually around $3,000. More if there's something special. Birthday parties, Christmas presents, emergency repairs. He's been very generous, very responsible about it, actually. $3,000 a month, $36,000 a year, for 7 years. Claire did the math automatically. $250,000, give or take. Money that could have gone into college funds for Ryan and Sophie, into retirement savings, into the life David had promised Claire when they got married. Instead, it had been funding a secret family. "I need you to send me everything," Claire said. "Every photo, every receipt, every text message. Can you do that?" "Yes." Catherine's fingers flew across her phone screen. "What's your email?" Claire gave it to her, and within seconds her phone began buzzing with incoming messages. Dozens of them. Evidence of David's double life, packaged and delivered by the woman who'd shared it with him. "There's something else," Catherine said hesitantly. "Something I found out recently that made me realize I had to contact you." Claire's stomach tightened. What could possibly be worse than what she'd already learned? "David has been talking about leaving," Catherine said. "Leaving you finally after all these years of promises, but not to be with me, to be alone. He's been saying he's tired of the juggling act, that he wants to start fresh somewhere else, leave both families behind, and just disappear." The first revelation hit like a punch to the chest. David was planning to abandon them, all of them, to walk away from 16 years of marriage, 4 children, 2 women who'd built their lives around him. Just pack up and start over somewhere new, unencumbered by the mess he'd created. "When?" Claire managed to ask. "When is he planning this?" "Soon," Catherine said. "He's been moving money around. I noticed because the deposits to my account have been smaller the last few months. When I asked him about it, he got defensive. Said business was slow, but I did some digging. I still have access to some of his financial accounts from before, passwords he never changed. He's been transferring money to offshore accounts, not huge amounts at once, but consistent, building up a nest egg that neither of us can touch." Claire felt dizzy. This was beyond infidelity. This was financial fraud. This was a man systematically planning to rob his families blind before vanishing into thin air. "How much?" she asked. "I don't know exactly, but based on what I could see, at least $200,000 over the past year. 200,000. That explained the tighter budget Claire had been dealing with lately. David's excuses about unexpected expenses at work, the market being down, needing to be more careful with their spending. All lies. All misdirection while he funneled their money into secret accounts. "I think he's planning to do it after the new year," Catherine continued. "Start fresh in January. Just leave. Maybe leave a note. Maybe not. Just disappear and let us pick up the pieces." The second revelation crashed into Claire before she could process the first. "There's someone else," she said suddenly, the understanding hitting her with devastating clarity. "Another woman. That's why he wants to leave both of us. He's already lined up the next one." Catherine's eyes widened. "How do you—" "Because I know him now," Claire said bitterly. "Really know him. David's not capable of being alone. He needs someone. He's probably already met her, already told her he's single, or in the process of leaving his wife, or whatever story he's perfected by now. She probably has no idea about me, or you, or the 4 children he's planning to abandon." Catherine covered her mouth with her hand. "Oh my God, you're right. That's exactly what he'd do." They sat in silence, letting the full scope of David's betrayal sink in. This wasn't a man caught between 2 loves. This wasn't even a man trying to have his cake and eat it too. This was a con artist, a user, someone who saw people as disposable, as toys to play with until he got bored and moved on to the next shiny thing. "We need to stop him," Claire said. Her voice was calm now, clear. The shock had burned away, leaving something harder in its place. "We need to expose everything before he can disappear. Freeze the accounts. Protect our children. Make sure he can't just walk away without consequences." "How?" Catherine asked. "I don't even know where to start." "I do," Claire pulled out her own phone and started scrolling through her contacts. My friend Sarah is a divorce attorney, one of the best in the state. She's been begging me to have lunch with her for months. I think it's time I took her up on that offer. She looked at Catherine. Are you willing to testify, to go on record about everything? Because it won't be pretty. Your name will be in court documents. People will judge you. Call you a home wrecker. Your girls might face questions at school. Catherine squared her shoulders. I've been living in shame for 7 years, hiding, lying, keeping secrets. Maybe it's time to stop. Maybe my daughters deserve to see their mother stand up for herself instead of just accepting whatever scraps she's given. Okay, Claire stood up. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You're going to send me everything you have. Every document, every photo, every piece of evidence. I'm going to call Sarah and set up an emergency meeting. Then we're going to figure out how to protect ourselves and our children before David even knows what hit him. What about confronting him? Catherine asked. Don't you want to hear his side? Claire thought about that. Part of her did want to confront David, wanted to see his face when he realized his carefully constructed lies had collapsed, wanted to hear him try to explain the unexplainable, but that would give him time to react, to hide money, to destroy evidence, to spin some new story that might let him slither out of consequences. No, she said finally. He doesn't get that. He doesn't get to prepare or make excuses or try to manipulate us. He's been controlling this narrative for 7 years. Now it's our turn. Catherine nodded slowly. What if he comes home tonight expecting to talk like you promised? What will you tell him? Nothing, Claire said. I'll tell him nothing until I'm ready. Until I have all my pieces in place. Until there's no way for him to escape what's coming. She gathered her purse and stood to leave, then paused. Catherine, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Do you still want him? If somehow this all went away, if I divorced him and left him free to be with you, would you want that? Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she shook her head. No, I thought I did. Even this morning I thought maybe we could find a way to make it work. But hearing you talk about who he really is, seeing the evidence of the third family he's planning, no. I don't want him. I don't think I ever really had him to want. I just had the fantasy of him. Good, Claire said. Because we're not fighting over him, we're fighting against him. There's a difference. Claire picked up Ryan and Sophie from school at 3:15, like she'd promised. They climbed into the car full of typical teenage and pre-teen chatter, Ryan complaining about his English teacher, Sophie excited about an upcoming field trip, normal kid conversations, normal kid problems. Claire listened and responded automatically, her mind elsewhere, planning and calculating and preparing for what came next. At home, she made them snacks and supervised homework like always. She texted David back with casual updates about their day, maintaining the illusion that everything was fine. He responded with emojis and love you and can't wait to be home. The lies came so easily to him. They always had. At 6 o'clock, Claire's phone rang. Sarah, her attorney friend, calling back after Claire's earlier message. My office. 7 tomorrow morning, Sarah said without preamble. Bring everything you have. And Claire, this is going to get ugly. Are you ready for that? Yes, Claire said, and meant it. After dinner, after the kids had gone upstairs to their rooms, Claire sat alone in the kitchen with a glass of wine she didn't drink. She pulled out her laptop and began going through the files Catherine had sent. Hours of evidence, years of betrayal, documented and time-stamped and irrefutable. She found photos of birthday parties she'd never been invited to, videos of Lily's first steps, with David's voice in the background cheering. A scan of Emma's birth certificate with David's name proudly listed as father. Text messages where he called Catherine baby and my love, and the best thing that ever happened to me. The same words he'd used with Claire a lifetime ago. Around 10 o'clock, she heard David's car in the driveway. She closed the laptop quickly and took a breath, steadying herself. She told him they needed to talk, so she had to say something. But not everything. Not yet. He came through the door looking worried. His tie loosened and hair slightly disheveled from travel. Claire, you okay? Your text scared me. She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing him now for what he was instead of what she'd believed him to be. How had she ever thought this man was trustworthy? How had she missed all the signs? I've been thinking about us, she said carefully, about our marriage, about whether we're really happy anymore. David's eyes widened. This clearly wasn't what he'd expected. What? Claire, where is this coming from? Just answer the question, are you happy? really happy. He moved toward her, reaching for her hands. She let him take them, even though his touch now felt like holding something contaminated. Of course I'm happy. I love you. I love our family. Why would you even ask that? Because you're gone so much, she said. Because I feel like I barely know you anymore. Because sometimes I wonder if you're really at all those conferences and client meetings, or if you're somewhere else entirely. For just a second, panic flashed across his face. Then it was gone, replaced by concern and confusion. Claire, that's my job. You know that. I wish I didn't have to travel as much, but that's the reality of my position. He was good. So good at lying. His face showed exactly the right amount of hurt and concern. His voice had just the right note of wounded innocence. If she hadn't already known the truth, she might have believed him, might have apologized for doubting him, but she did know, and she would never believe him again. Okay, she said, pulling her hands away gently. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just tired. It's been a long day. Are you sure that's all? He studied her face. You seem different, like something's wrong. I'm fine, she lied, matching his false sincerity with her own. Just need some sleep. He seemed to accept this, relief visible in the relaxing of his shoulders. Okay, let's go to bed. We can talk more in the morning if you want. They went upstairs together. David kissed her goodnight like he always did, pulled her close like he always did, whispered I love you like he always did. And for the first time in 16 years, Claire lay rigid beside him, counting the minutes until she could escape to the lawyer's office and start destroying the life he'd built on lies. Around 2 in the morning, David's phone buzzed on his nightstand. He reached for it sleepily, checked the message, then froze. Claire felt him go rigid beside her. She kept her eyes closed, her breathing steady, pretending to be asleep. He slipped out of bed carefully and took the phone to the bathroom. Through the closed door, Claire could hear his voice, low and urgent. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. He was scared. When he came back to bed, he didn't sleep. She could feel him staring at the ceiling, feel the tension radiating from his body. Something had rattled him. Catherine, probably, or maybe his mystery third woman, the one who represented his planned escape. Good. Let him be scared. Let him lie awake wondering what was happening. Let him feel a fraction of the fear and uncertainty he'd inflicted on everyone who loved him. The next morning, Claire was up before dawn. She showered and dressed in her best suit, the one she wore to parent-teacher conferences and school board meetings. Armor. She left a note for the kids saying she had an early appointment, asked them to get themselves ready for school. Then she drove to Sarah's office, arriving at 6:50 with her laptop and a flash drive containing everything Catherine had sent her. Sarah was already there, coffee brewing, yellow legal pads ready. She took one look at Claire's face and poured them both a cup. Tell me everything. So Claire did. Start to finish. The letter, Catherine, the other children, the offshore accounts, the planned abandonment, all of it. Sarah listened without interrupting, taking notes, her expression growing grimmer by the minute. When Claire finished, Sarah sat back in her chair. This is big, bigger than a standard divorce. We are talking fraud, possible bigamy depending on what claims he made to Catherine, financial crimes. We could bring criminal charges if you want to go that route. I want him to pay, Claire said. Not just money. I want him to face real consequences. I want him to lose everything he's tried so hard to protect. Then we need to move fast, Sarah said. Before he realizes what's happening, I'll file for an emergency order to freeze all joint accounts. I'll subpoena his financial records, including any offshore accounts we can find. And I'll make sure Catherine is protected too. She and those children deserve child support at minimum, even if she was complicit in the affair. What about Ryan and Sophie? Claire asked. How do I tell them? Sarah's expression softened. Carefully, honestly. Maybe with a therapist present. They're going to be devastated, angry, confused. But kids are resilient. And they're better off knowing the truth than living in a lie. Claire nodded. She'd been thinking about this all night. Ryan was old enough to understand betrayal, old enough to be angry at his father. Sophie would take it harder, probably. She was still at that age where she believed her father could do no wrong. Both of them were about to have their world shattered. There's one more thing, Claire said. Catherine mentioned David might have a third woman. Someone new he's planning to run away with. Can we find out who she is? Sarah made a note. Private investigator. I know a good one. Discreet. He can track David's movements. Figure out who he's seeing. If there's another woman, we'll find her. They spent the next 2 hours going through strategy: what to file, when to file it, how to protect Claire's assets, and ensure David couldn't hide or move money before the courts froze everything. Sarah was thorough, methodical, ruthless in the best possible way. By 9 o'clock, Claire felt like she had an army behind her. Not just Sarah, but Catherine too. 2 women who'd been played by the same man, now working together to make sure he couldn't play anyone else. "One last question," Sarah said as Claire was preparing to leave. "When do you want to serve him? When do you want him to know that you know?" Claire thought about that. David was scheduled to fly out again on Friday for another business trip. 3 days from now. Probably meeting the mystery woman. Probably making plans for his great escape. "Serve him at the airport," Claire said. "Friday morning, right before his flight. Make it public, make it humiliating. Make sure he knows exactly what he's losing before he boards that plane thinking he's getting away with everything." Sarah smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a lawyer who knew she had a winning case. "I like the way you think. Let's destroy him." The next 3 days passed in a surreal fog. Claire maintained the facade of normalcy at home while secretly meeting with lawyers, accountants, and the private investigator Sarah had hired. David remained tense and distracted, checking his phone constantly, but he didn't confront her, didn't ask more questions about her strange text message. He was too focused on his own secrets to notice hers. The private investigator worked fast. By Thursday evening he had information. There was indeed a third woman. Her name was Jennifer. She was 32, worked as a pharmaceutical sales rep, and had met David at a conference 6 months ago. She had no idea he was married, no idea about Catherine and the girls. She thought David was a divorced father of 2 who'd finally found love again after a difficult split. The same story he'd told Catherine 7 years ago. The same con, just with different details. "We could contact her," Sarah suggested during their Thursday evening phone call. "Warn her. She deserves to know what she's getting into." "Not yet," Claire said. "Let her find out with everyone else. Let it be part of the public record. She'll believe it more if it comes from a judge than from the angry wife." Friday morning dawned cold and grey. Claire woke early, made breakfast for Ryan and Sophie, hugged them both tighter than usual. They were going to learn the truth soon. She'd arranged for a family therapist to meet with them tomorrow morning. But for now, she let them live in ignorance a little longer. Let them have one more day of thinking their father was a good man. David came downstairs at 6:30, already dressed for travel. Suit and tie, carry-on bag, the uniform of the business traveler, the costume of the con artist. "I'll be back Sunday night," he said, kissing Claire's cheek. The casual intimacy of it made her skin crawl. "Love you." "Love you too," she said, and watched him leave. She'd timed it perfectly. Sarah had a process server waiting at the airport. The divorce papers were ready. The emergency orders were signed by a judge. David's accounts were about to be frozen. His double life was about to become public record. Claire didn't go to the airport herself. Sarah had advised against it, said it was better to maintain distance, to let the legal process handle it. But she did make one call. To Catherine. "It's happening," she said when Catherine answered. "Right now, he's about to be served." Catherine's breath caught. "Are you scared?" "Terrified," Claire admitted, but also relieved. "This is the end of the lies. Whatever comes next, at least it will be real." "Thank you," Catherine said softly, "for not blaming me, for not making me the enemy. I know I deserve that, but thank you." "We were both his victims," Claire said, "but we're not victims anymore. Now, we're survivors." She hung up and waited. At 8:15, her phone rang. "Sarah." "It's done," Sarah said, satisfaction clear in her voice. "He's been served." The look on his face was priceless. He tried to argue with the process server, tried to claim there was some mistake. Security had to get involved. He missed his flight. "Good," Claire said. "He's calling you, multiple times, texting too. Don't answer, don't engage, let him panic, let him wonder. You have all the power now." Claire looked at her phone. 15 missed calls from David. Dozens of text messages, progressing from confused to angry to desperate. She didn't read them, didn't need to. She knew what they'd say. Denials, accusations, promises, lies, always more lies. She blocked his number and set her phone aside. The press got hold of the story by afternoon. It wasn't every day that a man with 2 complete families got exposed so spectacularly. The local news ran it as a human interest piece. Local businessman caught in shocking double life. David's company issued a statement saying they were looking into the matter. His photograph was everywhere, along with photos of Claire and Catherine that had somehow been obtained by reporters. Claire's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends wanting to gossip. Acquaintances offering hollow sympathy. Reporters requesting interviews. She ignored them all except for one, a producer from a national morning show who wanted to do a segment on financial infidelity and the women who survive it. "Catherine and I will do it together," Claire said, "but not until after the divorce is final. Not until we're ready." That evening, she sat Ryan and Sophie down in the living room. The family therapist, Dr. Morrison, was there to help guide the conversation. Claire had practiced what she was going to say, but now that the moment had arrived, all her prepared words vanished. "Your father has been lying to us," she said simply, "for a very long time. He has another family, a woman named Catherine and 2 little girls, half-sisters you've never met." The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan was the first to react. "That's not possible. Dad wouldn't, he couldn't." "It's true," Claire said gently. "I have proof, legal documents. I've filed for divorce. He's not coming home." Sophie started crying, huge heaving sobs that shook her small frame. Claire pulled her close, held her tight, let her rage and grieve and process. Ryan sat frozen, his face cycling through emotions too fast to name. Shock, denial, anger, betrayal. "Did you know?" he finally asked. "Did you know and stay with him anyway?" "No," Claire said firmly. "I found out 3 days ago, and as soon as I did, I started fighting back. I'm fighting for us. For our family. The real family." Dr. Morrison stepped in then, helping guide the conversation, giving Ryan and Sophie space to ask questions and express their feelings. It was brutal. It was necessary. And through it all, Claire held them both, promising them that whatever came next, they would face it together. If you've ever faced betrayal, if you've ever had to rebuild from ruins, if you've ever wondered if you have the strength to start over, share this story, like this video. Comment below about your own journey from victim to survivor, because the truth matters, justice matters, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is refuse to keep someone else's secrets. 2 weeks later, Claire met Catherine for coffee again. Same coffee shop, same table in the back corner, but everything was different now. They weren't strangers anymore, weren't rivals. They were something new, something neither of them had expected to become. Friends, maybe, or at least allies. "He wants to reconcile," Catherine said, stirring her coffee. "He's been texting me, saying he can explain everything, that we can work this out." "He's texting me too," Claire said, "from new numbers since I blocked him, saying I'm overreacting, that I'm destroying our family over a mistake." "A mistake?" Catherine laughed bitterly. 7 years and 2 children is quite a mistake. 16 years and a complete second life is an even bigger one, Claire countered. They sat in companionable silence for a moment. Then Catherine said, "Jennifer contacted me, the 3rd woman. She'd seen the news reports and wanted to hear our side of the story." "What did you tell her?" "Everything. She was devastated. Apparently David had proposed to her. She'd been planning a wedding for June, had already picked out a dress." Claire closed her eyes. Of course he had proposed. Of course there was another woman who thought she was special, chosen, different from all the others. "How is she?" "Angry, humiliated, but she's agreed to testify if needed, to show the pattern, the fraud. She's another piece of evidence that David isn't a man who made mistakes. He's a man who deliberately, systematically deceives everyone in his life." "Good." Claire pulled out her phone and showed Catherine a photo. "This came in the mail yesterday. It was a Christmas card. On the front was a photo of 5 people, Claire, Ryan, Sophie, Catherine and little Emma. Lily was the photographer, her shadow visible at the edge of the frame. They were standing in Claire's backyard, bundled in coats, genuinely smiling. Ryan and Sophie wanted to meet their half-sisters, Claire explained. "It was awkward at first, but the girls are sweet. And Ryan's already being a protective older brother. Sophie loves having little girls to fuss over." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. I never imagined we could be anything other than enemies." "Neither did I," Claire admitted. "But David doesn't get to define us anymore. We define ourselves. And I think maybe we can build something good out of all this wreckage. Not for him, for us, for all our children." The divorce proceedings were brutal and public. David's assets were forensically examined, revealing not just the offshore accounts, but years of financial deception. He'd been planning his escape for at least 2 years, systematically hiding money and preparing to disappear. The judge was not sympathetic. Claire got the house, half of David's pension, generous alimony, and full custody of Ryan and Sophie, with David's visitation rights severely restricted, until he completed counselling. Catherine was awarded child support for both girls, retroactive to their births, plus compensation for 7 years of being systematically defrauded. David's company fired him. His reputation in the industry was destroyed. He moved to another state, took a job making a fraction of what he used to earn, and faded from the public eye. He tried to rebuild his image on social media, positioning himself as a victim of vindictive ex-wives, but no one was buying it. Claire went back to her work as a substitute teacher, but with a new mission. She started speaking at women's groups about financial infidelity, about the importance of maintaining your own accounts and understanding your family's finances, about recognizing red flags, about trusting your instincts when something feels wrong. Catherine went back to school, using part of her settlement to get an MBA. She said she never wanted to be financially dependent on anyone ever again. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, Claire and Catherine took all 5 children to the beach for a week. It was chaotic and exhausting, and occasionally awkward, but it was also healing. Ryan taught Lily how to body surf. Sophie built elaborate sandcastles with Emma. The 5 of them looked like a family. Not a traditional one, but a family nonetheless. On the last night, after the kids were asleep, Claire and Catherine sat on the deck, watching the ocean. The sound of waves was rhythmic and soothing, washing away the last remnants of anger and pain. "Do you ever wish you could go back?" Catherine asked. "To before you knew, when you thought you were happily married?" Claire considered the question. "No," she finally said, "because that happiness was built on lies. This," she gestured at the house behind them, full of sleeping children, "this is harder, but it's real, and I'll take painful truth over comfortable fiction every single time." Catherine nodded. "Me too." They sat in silence, 2 women who'd been torn apart by the same man's selfishness, but had somehow, impossibly, found a way to build something better from the ruins. Not the life either of them had planned, not the family they'd imagined, but a life and a family that was theirs, built on honesty instead of deception. And that, Claire thought, was worth everything. She pulled out her phone and took a selfie, her and Catherine, ocean behind them, genuine smiles on both their faces. She posted it to social media with a simple caption, "Survivors." Within minutes, the comments started pouring in. Other women sharing their stories, other families torn apart by infidelity, other survivors finding strength in Claire and Catherine's example. The letter that had destroyed Claire's old life had ultimately given her something more valuable than the comfortable lies she'd been living. Truth, strength, and an unexpected friendship forged in the fire of shared betrayal. David had tried to have everything. In the end, he'd lost it all. But Claire and Catherine and their children, they'd gained each other. And that was a family worth fighting for.